If you'd like to support Dreamlandia beyond comments and feedback, I opened a coffee. Animation is incredibly expensive, and this project is entirely self-funded right now. Supporters help me work towards making this pilot a reality.
Well, it lives in our sewers, and we have footage of it. Here it comes, the coolest, most violent footage ever.
It's always been a dream of mine to bring an animated pilot to life, a sort of hazy dream that seems to fit more into fiction than reality. The problem is, every time I tried before, I got in my own way. I was so focused on keeping my goals realistic that I'd fall into one of two traps. Either, one, I'd make the project way too ambitious and get overwhelmed by the mountains of work ahead of me, or two, I'd rush things to save time and end up with a half-finished, half-baked pilot that never lived up to the idea in my head. Regardless, I'm too stubborn to quit, so eventually that led me here, to this project, this series. But this story didn't start off with a grand plan. It started off with one thing, a sketch. Yep, just one sketch. This one, specifically. Like I do most days, I was doodling and trying to figure out what my next project should be. I knew this time I needed something I could realistically handle on my own, so I intentionally kept the design simple, memorable, and flexible enough to animate consistently. That's where our main character came from. When I first sketched her, she didn't even have a name. Later, when I was talking with a friend of mine, we would name her Minx. Before I knew it, I was knee-deep in lore, world building, and character designs, with one question burning in the back of my head. How the hell do I get this in front of people? I mean, yeah, I'd like to think I know what I'm doing, but even a second pair of eyes can be incredibly helpful to a project. That's when it dawned on me. Production logs. Every major milestone, breakthrough, mistake, redesign, and questionable creative decision. All of it getting documented as I figure this series out in real time. And hopefully, some of my mistakes end up helping somebody else in the process. Seems like a win-win. One other thing also became clear pretty early on. I wanted music for the series. Not just because I love music, but because music can completely change how an animated world feels. Shows like Steven Universe and Has Been Hotel were also huge inspirations for me in that regard. Of course, the bigger problem with this was finding the music. Looking at a lot of animatics and other things that I've seen have problems with copyrighted music, that made one thing very clear to me. I had to find someone who was willing to make original music. That is when I found this wonderful artist called Seconds After Dark. Okay, technically he's a friend of a friend, but still I was super excited to have another creative join the team. Things were really coming together at this point. I had the story, the music, the main character, but there was still one massively important thing missing. Arguably the most important thing of any series. Did you guess the logo? You should have guessed a logo. Being the only visual artist on this project means my time is incredibly limited. If I'm not working on New Dreamlandia, I'm working on other projects to help fund New Dreamlandia. So from the very beginning, I knew branding had to matter. People form opinions on a project fast, sometimes within seconds. The logo needed to communicate the tone of the series before anyone even watched it. I kept that in mind throughout the process, starting with the font. Font design is easy to gloss over. I mean, they're just letter forms, right? Yeah, it gets terrifying, surprisingly fast. I'm not going to bore you with the entire history of fonts and how they have so much damn vocabulary. What matters is that typography is the result of centuries of experimentation focused on one fundamental question. Can people read it? Those goals eventually led me to creating Midnight Stroll. I wanted the lettering for Midnight Stroll to feel handcrafted and expressive, something readable and dreamlike. After doing some research into what softwares are really out there, I eventually landed on one called Font Self. Font Self is surprisingly affordable, lets artists create hand-drawn fonts directly on their iPad, and doesn't require a subscription. And like, sure, you can pay $50 and make one through Illustrator, but like, why? Thankfully, by this point, I'd already experimented with custom fonts with smaller projects, so I had at least some idea on what I was doing. One of the biggest things I focused on was cohesion. I wanted to use repeated shapes and decorative elements throughout the lettering so everything felt connected instead of like random letters stitched together. You know, you don't want individual letters to feel like they belong to entirely different typefaces after all. The final result? Honestly, they feel remarkably polished. Once the font was done, I moved on to the actual logo. And honestly, my first attempt kinda sucked. It was difficult to read. The composition felt weak, the symbol barely interacted with the title itself. It had like no impact. A shooting star motif, though, would have more impact. Originally, I leaned a lot harder into the music theming. The streaks behind the logos were supposed to resemble sheet music, carrying the notes across the composition and leading your eye back towards the title. Cool idea in theory, but in practice, it just didn't really work out. I focused on making the design stronger and easier to read at a glance. I also dropped the title onto 2 lines instead of stretching everything across one long shape, which immediately gave the logo more visual weight and made the composition feel much more balanced. Because a logo has to do 2 things at once. Be distinct enough to stand out, while still being simple enough for someone to remember. Overall, I think this logo type accomplishes both of these. But tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hey, looks like you guys made it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching this first production log. It took me so long to put this thing together, and I'm very happy with it. I think it does a very good job of breaking down how I put the logo together, and a lot of the programs that I use. I think I want to focus a lot more on a lot of indie-friendly programs, if that makes sense, like Font Self, where you don't have to pay in that large subscription like you have to with, you know, more known programs like Adobe, for instance. If you did enjoy this, though, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe for more production logs, because there will definitely be more of these on the way. If you have any suggestions, maybe you guys prefer another program, or you guys think that, you know, maybe there's something I can do with the logo that you guys want to suggest, please feel free to put it down in the comments. This is a growing project, you know, a living, growing project, and I want to treat it as such. And I'll see you guys in the next production log. Bye bye.